everybody. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to TCR Trinity Competitive Racing.
Well, TCR TJ is the Season 13 Golden Class Champion for Trinity Competitive Racing.
Oh, let's go, dude! Yes!
Jabbar on the podium! He's on it by a 10! Gentlemen, side by side through one.
And Silent, and Seafreeze gets a half spin.
Let's fucking go! Wheel bumping.
DRS enable, let's do it.
And Captain Blade battling it out for position. Captain Blade.
Ickle, what the?
The McChicken goes around and he also makes
Rewind down the front straight. Oh my god. I gotta check the heart rate.
Why do we do this? Because of nights like this.
Yo, welcome everybody to TCR Trinity Competitive Racing, and welcome to episode 39 of the Racing Debrief, TCR's podcast where we combine the world of e-racing, sim racing, and TCR with real-life motorsports and Formula One. A true racing enthusiast listen. For those listening possibly on Spotify or Apple Music, this will be our first episode airing on there, if Seafreeze knows what he is doing once this recording is all stopped and processed. So we are going to be releasing the podcast on different platforms now. So this should, if everything goes correctly, be on Spotify and Apple Music, possibly more. But we're going to start with those two, and of course we're going to be on the YouTube as well, so you get some sort of a visual. Some episodes it'll mean a little bit more than others, but for those who are new and maybe just stumbled upon our podcast, I encourage you guys to maybe go back on to our YouTube, Trinity Competitive Racing. We have 38 other episodes up, so you can kind of get a little glimpse of what this podcast is known and what you're going to be getting into. But for those who are unaware, my name is Seafreeze, your host, as long with my usual co-host of Camden Luca. And yeah, we got a bunch of topics here today, and we're ready to get into it.
We are. First of all, I am super excited that we are able to expand this podcast onto Spotify and Apple Music. That's a big stepping stone for us. But yeah, this is mostly a motorsport podcast. We talk a lot about our league, but we also talk about Formula One and even a little bit of other stuff such as NASCAR, IndyCar, whatever we want to talk about basically. And today, I know that there's a lot that we're going to go over, so it should be a packed episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, just a quick shout out to everybody supporting TCR. TCR hit a pretty big milestone this last week, and it had a lot to do with some of the shorts you've been posting, Camden, so a little shout out to you as well. Hit the algorithm a little bit, and we have achieved 600 subscribers on the TCR YouTube channel, so congrats to everybody who is continuing their support, and those few new subscribers who tuned in to get us to that 600. We thank you. Never too late to join the party, and hopefully we could keep this momentum going through season 17. We'll get to more of that later on. But I think we have to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah. There's a big elephant in the room that needs to be addressed.
You know what? I'm going to let you go first, because I know this hit you more than it hit me.
Yeah. So the elephant in the room is that Lewis Hamilton has just announced that he will be going to Ferrari in 2025. And, if I want to compare this to any other sport, this is probably like when LeBron James went to Miami. This is like as big as it gets for Formula One. And, like you said, Seafreeze, this hit me hard because I remember when I woke up that morning of the announcement, I went into the TCR Discord and I saw somebody posted a meme of like, you know, a young Fernando Alonso is going to replace Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was some stupid meme that somebody put in the Discord for literally no reason. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I go onto Instagram and I see breaking news, Lewis Hamilton to leave Mercedes. And I had to do a double check. I'm like, is this... Yeah, this is the Formula One account that just posted this. Like, are we serious right now? And I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan. You know, I've always been a Lewis Hamilton fan, always been a Mercedes fan. So at first, I was a little upset because I felt like Mercedes was getting back on track this year. They didn't win a race, but Lewis finished third in points. I felt like they were a little more competitive. But when I heard that, you know, he's leaving because possibly Mercedes didn't allow his input into the car changes, it makes sense. So I'm honestly excited. You know, I think Ferrari, as long as they just, you know, as long as they get their strategies right and as long as they allow Lewis to have his input, this could be good. But no, at first it shook me, but I think it's starting to sink in a little bit. I don't know about you though. I know you're a Ferrari guy, Seafree. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, very similar as well. When I saw that news, I don't even know where I saw it. I think I saw it in the TCR Discord as well. I saw some people posting about it. Initially, I thought it was just some meme or some joke or, you know, something that was just rumored but not actually true. But then when I started looking more on the social media and the other platforms, then I was like, wait, this is like everybody is saying it. Like,
Yeah.
it's confirmed. And then as the day went on, we got actual confirmation from like Toto Wolff and Hamilton himself and how the meeting happened and all this other stuff, and it's like, whoa, it's actually happening. I gotta say, I am kind of still in disbelief that this is gonna be happening. Now, I'll always say, you still have to wait another full year, and you never know if it ever will happen, because a lot can happen in a year. Just putting that out there. So until I see him, Hamilton, in a red suit and actually getting into the car, I'm not going to believe it. I'm not going to believe it a bit. Because for me, he's been so loyal to Mercedes that I can never picture him in red, you know? But then when you look back at his career, it's like, oh, you know what? This shouldn't be so much of a shock, because look what he did much earlier on in his career when he went from McLaren Mercedes to then the Mercedes work team, and everybody thought that was the wrong decision, and look how that turned out. And when he did that move, it was also a shock, and people were doubting, why would you go to Mercedes? They're a newly formed team, this and that. Turned out to be the reason why he's a part of 7-time champion. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to go to Ferrari and have a winning success with championships, but I think there was some rumors last year that he did want to go to Ferrari, and the way that he lost the championship in 21 to Max, and the Mercedes car not really being where it should be, with the development in this new era of car, it only makes sense that he signs for Ferrari. And when you look more into it, Fred Vasseur is a good friends with Hamilton, and I think he was his engineer when he was back in the lower categories, and then it started to kind of make more sense. He sees Leclerc have a long-term deal signed up. Sainz didn't put, pen to paper, probably because they didn't offer him something. And Ferrari have been wanting Hamilton, it seems like, for the last few years. So Hamilton finally pulled the trigger. What's surprising for me is, how did he get out of the 2025 drive for Mercedes? Because I thought it was a 2-year deal for Mercedes for 24 and 25. Now he's leaving a year early, so there somewhere in there was a clause to where he was able to get out of it, and now he's going to Ferrari. So it's still a big shock for me.
Yeah, I agree. I just think the surprising part about it is, like you said, how invested he was in Mercedes, mostly because of his efforts with the diversity and inclusion. You know, he really rebranded that team and put a lot of effort into making that team kind of something that he envisioned, right? And now he's basically leaving it, and he's going to take all those efforts and put it elsewhere. And you know, the thing is too, is like when he gets to Ferrari, he's going to be 40 years old.
Yeah.
This isn't like when he joined Mercedes where he was in his, you know, late 20s, early 30s. You know, this is going to be a 3 to 4 year project probably. And they're going to have to get things moving fast. Now, like you said, a lot of things can change in a year. He might not even go to Ferrari, but I mean, we'll talk about Red Bull here in a second, but where's Red Bull going to be at in 2 years' time by 2025? Are they still going to be the best team? So really, can you imagine if we get a Ferrari versus Mercedes battle for the championship? Lewis Hamilton taking down Mercedes for a record. Oh man, I can't even think about that. For a record-breaking 8th championship against, because he's tied with Michael Schumacher right now, the guy that used to drive for a Ferrari. There's no way that happens, right? Like that almost seems too perfect.
If that does happen, that's like the best career anyone's ever had, for sure.
You got to retire right then and there too.
Yeah.
Even if you have years left on your contract, like I heard they're going to pay him $100 million a year. You got to retire. If you win the 2025 title, just be like, nope, you can keep your money. I'm leaving.
Yeah. Well, you know what? So here's 2 more thoughts I have on this whole Hamilton to Ferrari deal. Firstly, from my perspective, I'm a Ferrari fan. I kind of came into the sport when Vettel made that transition from Red Bull to Ferrari. Vettel was my guy. That's when I started watching the sport. So I haven't been watching, you know, since the early 2000s. And obviously Vettel and Ferrari went up against Hamilton and Mercedes, and they lost. And I think I could speak for, I think most of the Ferrari supporters and even Vettel fans that are still supporting Ferrari today, I think they're welcoming Hamilton to Ferrari, because when it was Mercedes versus Ferrari, Hamilton versus Vettel, yes, they did lose to them, and they are their rivals, but through the entire time, it's always stayed respectful between the two. Between the two brands, between the two drivers, between the two engineers. It's always kind of stayed respectful, and I think Ferrari, who hasn't won since Kimi Räikkönen, would welcome a 7-time Formula 1 champion to their team and see if that is the missing piece. I think this does prove one thing, though. If Hamilton goes to Ferrari for a few-year project, and you have Hamilton and Leclerc, and they're not able to win a drivers or constructors, that confirms that you need the car under you in order for something to work. But can Hamilton help Ferrari get there? You know, Ferrari, they've had a lot of strategy miscalls in the last few years. Hamilton usually calls his own strategy or has more control in that say. So as a Ferrari fan, I'm welcoming a 7-time champion. I was never really a Mercedes fan. I wasn't really a Lewis fan either, but I've always respected him because he's really good. And personally, I welcome him as well. And I'd love to see him in Ferrari. Now that he's racing for the team that I support more, at least towards the front, you know, let's see what could be done. But there's been a lot of successful Formula 1 drivers to go to Ferrari. Alonso, Vettel, you know, Kimi was there. He had success, and that was the last, you know, successful driver with the Drivers' Championship Who else was there? There was a graphic. Well, Sainz went, but then you also had Massa went. So, and obviously Schumacher with his winning ways, but it's been a while since Ferrari has won. But let's see if Hamilton could break the streak. This isn't the first time a multi-champion goes to Ferrari to try and win. We've seen it with Alonso. We've seen it with Vettel. Can Hamilton, make it a successful mission the few years that he's there? We don't know yet. So that'll be, really the big thing there. I don't think he needs a driver's championship for anything to be successful. I think a couple podiums and maybe a race win would be a successful trip to Ferrari, in my opinion. But I think he wants, a lot more.
Yeah, I think he needs to at least get one more win, especially if he doesn't win this next year with Mercedes. Because remember, his last win is still Saudi Arabia from 2021.
Yeah.
So he hasn't won a race since that Abu Dhabi fiasco. But I actually want to make a comparison right now. And the more I think about it, the more I realize how similar this is. When Tom Brady left the New England Patriots, and I'm talking about the NFL right now, he was in his early 40s. People were saying he might be done. He should retire. He ended up going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At the time, the Buccaneers hadn't won a championship in almost 20 years. Does that sound familiar to what we're talking about right now with Ferrari? It'll be almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Next year, it'll be 18 years since Ferrari last won a driver's championship.
Wow.
So he's going to Ferrari, a team which hasn't won a driver's championship in almost 20 years. He's going to be in his early 40s. And the argument with Tom Brady at the time was, can he win without Bill Belichick? Because the narrative was, Brady's just a product of his coach. But with Hamilton, the argument is kind of, he's just the product of Mercedes. The car really carried him, which I don't think is true. I think that's just a bunch of haters, just trying to, put his value down. But yeah, I mean, piggybacking off of what you said, I think people are going to get exposed a little bit, and I'm talking about Ferrari fans. I think they're gonna take back everything they've said about Lewis, and they're gonna learn to like him, especially when he delivers them a bunch of wins and maybe a driver's championship.
Yeah, but I think, if you look at the last few years between Mercedes and Red Bull, you can see the toxicity between the two fan groups. I think everybody in 2021, any Formula One fan, you don't have to be a Mercedes fan or a Red Bull fan. You could be a McLaren fan or a Ferrari fan. But everybody picked either side, almost. No one was really down the middle. I mean, if you're a Formula One fan, you're going to be rooting. Who would you like to see win that championship? And I think because of the toxicity, it really put a line down the middle between Lewis and Mercedes, Max fans, and Red Bull. When Ferrari and Mercedes went up against each other, you really didn't have it that much. I mean, you did have, obviously, the split, but I felt like it was respectful. With Max and Hamilton, they didn't really have that same respect, and I think the fan bases also didn't have that much respect. So, obviously some things probably were said from Ferrari fans about Hamilton, but hey, if he starts winning, they'll start to like him.
Yeah, I think so. Especially if Red Bull starts to decline even just a little bit over the next couple of years, to where Ferrari gets ahead of them. And I think this time around, it could be Verstappen and Hamilton again, but chances are it's going to go over a lot better than it did in 2021. So if Lewis wins the championship, or even a constructor's championship, for the most beloved team in Formula One, which isn't not disputable, as Vettel once said, everybody's a Ferrari fan, even if they don't say it, right? Yep. So if Lewis wins a championship with Ferrari, he would have won a driver's championship with 3 different teams, which, has that ever been done before? I don't think that's ever been done before.
I mean, Schumacher was what, 2?
2, yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm telling you, there's a lot that can be added to Lewis's legacy. I think his legacy is set. You know, whatever happens with Ferrari, like say it doesn't go well, people will say, oh, he was old, or oh, the car wasn't great. But Lewis has the ability to really like reach a status that may never be reached again if he wins a record-breaking 8th championship for Ferrari. It would just be, like I said, it really almost sounds too perfect. Like it almost seems unrealistic, but you never know.
it's almost completely going to be flip-flopped between Schumacher and Hamilton, if you think about it. Schumacher got most of his success at Ferrari. Where did he finish his career?
Mercedes.
And
Wow.
I'm pretty sure he has a last podium is at Mercedes.
Yeah.
And maybe last pole position.
So
At
are you
Monaco.
saying Lewis is only going to get 1 podium and 1 pole position?
I mean,
Oh my
it
God,
could
that
happen.
would suck.
But no, I think he'll grab a win. But it's just like if you look at Lewis Hamilton, you think Mercedes, even the Mercedes engine back when he was with McLaren. Now you move up, and it's like, oh, his last win, his last podium, his last fastest lap, everything will be under Ferrari. If that's his last team, you never know. He could go to Ferrari and then another team, but most likely Ferrari will be his last stop.
Yeah, I think this will be his last stop. And yeah, like I said, though, you know, this could be a 3-year project, could be 4, it could be 5 years. If we go back to the Tom Brady comparison, I know it's a different sport, but Brady played until he was 45. And I know Lewis takes really good care of his body.
He's in great shape.
He does all sorts of outdoor activities, you know, outside of F1. He has a very strict diet. Like, I don't think longevity is going to be his issue. I think it's just going to be how the car is, and maybe it could be luck too. I mean, injuries are still a thing. You can still have a freak accident and get hurt. You know, with all the safety that we have, an injury in your early 40s, that could be it. We saw it in NASCAR a couple years ago with Kurt Busch. You know, these things can still happen even with the technology we have. So, yeah, no, this is the biggest driver's move I think we've seen in at least. I mean,
No, this is it.
Since he
This
went
is
to
the biggest.
Mercedes.
Boom. Yeah, but yeah,
probably
that's
since he went to
since
Mercedes.
absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of badass too. I like it. And the only bad downside to this is we have to wait a whole year.
I know. Isn't that awkward? He's going to be at Mercedes for a full year, and they know that he's leaving.
And they have a whole year to figure out who's going in that car, which, man, you have so many options. You could go. I think Mercedes will want to go long term. I think they're going to promote either. I think they're looking at Albon, Sainz, and Ocon as their drivers. Yes, Alonso would be a flashy move. Even if you looked in the dreams, does Vettel go to Mercedes? Does he come back?
No,
That's
he's not
gonna
coming
happen.
back. Not coming back.
That's also a pretty risky move too, to put someone who hasn't been racing recent into a Mercedes car. So that's going to be a no. But does Alonso, go? But I think they're going to work with either Albon, Ocon, or Sainz. I don't think Alonso would be a flashy move, and I know he's probably wants to go, but I don't know. I know he gets along with Russell.
Extremely risky to hire Fernando Alonso. As good as he may be, no, I'm sorry.
And it would only be for very short term, because he's older than Lewis. So, if Alonso's still going, how much more does he have, right? So, I think those are my bets. Those three. I was also thinking, Daniel Ricciardo. I know he has maybe that Red Bull seat lined up, but it seems like someone else could snag it to be next to Max. It's not really certain that Ricciardo would go there. Does Ricciardo look and say, hey, a Mercedes seat I'll hop into Lewis's seat any day.
Yeah, I don't think that would happen though. Even him going to Red Bull, because Max Verstappen's talked about the fact that he's probably going to retire in the next few years, maybe when his contract is up. So Red Bull probably might actually be the team that goes for a long-term second driver when, because I don't think Perez is going to stick around. I don't think he's the long-term solution there. So they'll probably go younger there. And then, I mean, for Mercedes, like, the more I think about it, you could bring in a guy like Fernando Alonso to mentor George Russell. Because Russell kind of took a step back last year. He had a few mistakes. Singapore was really bad.
Yes.
He had a couple of blunders, so maybe they could bring somebody in just to maybe mentor him if he doesn't get back on track in 2024.
Yeah. Well, the next big thing, which was kind of overshadowed by this Hamilton news, was the Andretti team with GM and Cadillac being declined by F1 for their entry. I think this entry was for 2025, and they did suggest that they would possibly look at another entry if GM actually makes their own engine for 2028. So a lot more down the line, and I'm not too sure how I feel about this, because in the rule book it states that 12 teams is the maximum amount of teams there could be in F1. So I don't like the idea or the viewpoint of, if we add another team, then the pie of money that goes to all the teams gets split again. You have to split to 11. Well, that's true, but if it allows in our rulebook that we're allowed to have 12 teams maximum, then anybody really should be able to join if they pay the entry fee and they present hey, this is our team, to be on the grid. Because then what will happen is, if other teams want to enter, they'll just try to buy the team over. And this is kind of how NASCAR does it with their charters and them having, I don't know how many charters, but I know they have a significant amount to where they have teams that are there every week, but they could have up to, I think now, 41 drivers on the grid for NASCAR. And what will happen is you just keep bringing teams in, and if they don't perform, they don't perform, but then over time they'll just get bought by somebody else. But I would like to see 12 teams every season. So the fact that they got declined when we're not even at the limit, for all these other reasons, doesn't really make sense to me. If you're allowed to have 12 teams, you should allow 2 more entries. They might not be a competitive team, but to me it doesn't really matter as long as you have the 12. Now, if we had 12 teams and somebody wanted to join extra, then I could see how it's a problem, because now you're saying, oh, well, this is what we agreed upon. We agreed to 12 teams maximum. Now they want to bring 13 in. That's going to split the pie up more. Then we got to change this, and that. The rules allow for 12 teams, so if a team wants to join, let them pay the fee, let them put out their plan, and let them race. I don't think it's really that fair for F1 to just say, yeah, we don't think you're going to be competitive for all these reasons. There's no room in the pit lane. We're not gonna allow you to be on the grid. Doesn't really make much sense, especially since Andretti. Now, I do kind of agree with them. I don't think they're going to be that competitive. I think they'd start towards the back. But Andretti, being a name in F1 already, as well as a big name in North America, and America specifically, teaming up with GM, another American brand, and F1 wanting to go to another street circuit, possibly in Chicago, having 4 tracks at US, why wouldn't you want Andretti, one of the biggest names in American motorsports, to also be on the grid? Doesn't seem right. I knew this was coming. I knew they were going to decline this entry, but at least they advised that, hey, we might take a look at it if this happens. So maybe there's still some discussion that could make sense. And I understand what F1's doing, but I feel like if the rules are in place, you should allow the 12 teams. I agree that you want competitive teams, and you want teams that are going to be like manufacturers. You have Mercedes, Ferrari, Audi is joining. You have Aston Martin, McLaren. All these big teams are there. And you're not really going to see these teams like a Haas anymore, or what AlphaTauri was. Now they're Visa, Cash App, credit card.
Oh, it's so stupid. It's the dumbest team name ever.
If they're allowed in the sport, then Andretti with GM should be allowed in the sport. You shouldn't have AlphaTauri, aka the Visa credit card, as a team in an entry, because that's a non-competitive team. And also, the last thing on the team's thought, with all these new teams trying to join and all this being declined, is that how is it that one owner could own multiple teams on the grid?
True.
How is that allowed? If you look at MLB, NFL, any major sport, what if the Yankees said, you know what, we want to create another team. We'll call it Yankees Junior. And we'll put them...
As a Red Sox fan, I would hate that.
We'll put them on the other side of the Hudson. How can the Steinbrenner family, as the owners of the Yankees, own another team and influence the sport? There's no way, there's no reason Red Bull should own then also AlphaTauri or whatever they're calling it, because they're owning 4 drivers, they're owning 2 teams. That's 20% of the grid. They're owning, it's too much. So why are they allowed, yet Andretti with GM can't join the grid? That to me does not make sense.
Yeah, so I do agree with that part. I don't think the system is perfect, but I am going to go in a little bit of a different direction here. The NASCAR comparison, which is a good one because we're kind of leaning towards that, to where NASCAR has charters for certain teams, but they have that because they would rather have certain teams show up every week and not get DNQ'd for a race during qualifying. They don't want those open entries coming in and kicking out one of the full-time teams. We don't have that problem in Formula One because we have a cap of 12 teams. So right now, we're at 10, right? And like you mentioned, we do have, a few teams that could be questionable as to whether or not they should even be on the grid, like Haas, which has always been, one of, if not the slowest team throughout their tenure in F1. But Andretti, think about it. If they put Andretti on the grid, that's the 11th team, and then some other team comes in, say by 2028, then they're full. And if another team wants to come in and say Andretti is doing terrible, not only do we have a controversy there of should we kick Andretti out, and that would be a bad look for the sport, but it's Formula One. We shouldn't just be allowed to have anybody come in and race. This is the premier motorsport in the world. And Formula One right now, I think, is at its peak when it comes to popularity. So, it sucks for Andretti because they already invested in their Formula One operations. They had a potential car at 60% size in a wind tunnel. They hired staff. This would be a huge blow to them, but at the end of the day, not everybody should be able to join Formula One. And like you said, I do agree that there shouldn't be an owner that has multiple teams, especially if your second team is one of the slowest teams on the grid and is never winning races. But one of the things that fans, I think, complain about, and not everybody does, but there's obviously a big gap between Red Bull and really everybody else. I mean, you got Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, but it's such a big competitive gap. And I hate to say it, but we're in an era now to where Formula One is really trying to narrow that down. They're really trying to make the competition better. This really is looking a lot like NASCAR from the early 2000s, to where they're trying to, add things. They're trying to change the car up. They're trying to put in certain rules, like the red flag rule for Formula One, for example. They're trying to make the grid closer. And if they're putting a team in like Andretti that is going to be slow, and they're taking up a possible spot for maybe a new team to come in, it sucks for Andretti, but honestly, I don't mind it. It sucks, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, I would like, if Andretti does join, I'd rather them make sure that their engine is a Cadillac GM engine, not being bought by someone else, and it's just like sponsored by GM. Like it's getting funding by GM. Kind of like what Alfa Romeo was with Sauber. Yes, it was Alfa Romeo, a brand that a lot of people recognize. But besides the funding, it was just a Sauber. Now that team's getting transformed. Sauber, that's why the livery released today. They got they're changing their identity more towards, away from Sauber, away from Alfa Romeo. Now it's more, with these other sponsors, different colors. This way they turn into Audi, and Audi's going to be an Audi engine. It's going to be, and that's competitive. So, the more teams we could see like that, which I'm pretty sure by 2026, we're going to have Mercedes, Ferrari, we're going to have Alpine, which is with their Renault engine. You're going to have Audi. You're going to have... Who am I missing?
Williams?
No, they're under Mercedes.
Oh, under Mercedes. Yeah. Not sure.
I know Red Bull's going to be switching to Ford then. And then I'm pretty sure there was one more. Not too... Oh, isn't Honda being something? Oh, or no?
Did we mention Audi already?
Yeah, I mentioned Audi. Isn't did Honda?
I can't keep track, dude.
Me either.
There's so much happening.
I thought Honda. I thought Honda came back, or they wanted to.
I did hear something about that, but I'm
Aren't they
not
going
sure
with Aston
if
Martin? Or did that
I'm
not
not
happen?
sure
I don't
if it
know.
got confirmed or not.
Google it up. Google while I'm blabbing over here.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure, but it does make it better when F1, like you said, is the premier. You want these manufacturers, you want these big brands, and you don't want them just to be a sponsor. You want them to actually, hey, this is their engine, not like an Alfa Romeo that they're just giving funding. You want them to be more like Audi, that they're giving actually an Audi engine.
Right. So Honda will contribute to Aston Martin in 2026.
Yeah. So then you have Honda too, right? So
yeah,
you're gonna have 6 different engines on the grid out of 10 teams, making Haas. Using the Ferrari. Williams will be with the Mercedes most likely. You have AlphaTauri, Visa, whatever. They'll be using, I guess, the Ford from Red Bull, and then McLaren will still be using the Mercedes there too. So, in order to win, you need to be competitive. You need your own parts, and really to be competitive. So that's good, but we'll see how that transforms. Not as surprising as the first news with Hamilton, but other news that broke today. Now I don't even know much about it. I just thought it was funny what I wrote. Christian Horner being horny. And
I love that.
I think he's in an investigation now. I don't really know what to make of it. I don't even know anything about it. So I just put it down.
Yeah, so from what I've read, he is under an external investigation after an accusation regarding his conduct was made by another member of staff at the Red Bull racing team. So it was apparently inappropriate, controlling behavior. So it doesn't sound like it's involving the S word, not the swear, but and I don't know if we should say it on here or if we're gonna get
I don't make
but
rules.
I don't know. It's not anything naughty, but it sounds like there was some sort of conflict, internal conflict with the team, and there was a formal accusation being brought forward.
Dun dun dun.
The downfall of Red Bull is upon us.
Yeah. Anywho, moving on. To NASCAR had a pretty poor weekend, I'd say, to come back. They had the clash at the Coliseum in LA, and it was supposed to happen. The main event was going to be Sunday night. I think it would have been. What time was it for?
It was supposed to be 8 o'clock on Sunday night.
Yeah, and supposedly there's some bad weather getting into the area. They were worried about flooding and other stuff, and they were already there for Saturday. What did they have on Saturday? They were the races to see if they got in, to see who got into the clash, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was on Saturday, and literally 4 hours they gave everybody notice that they were going to move the clash from Sunday evening to Saturday night. And there was nobody there to watch it.
Yeah.
Pretty
It
much.
was embarrassing because I can't imagine how much money they lost because if you remember, initially fans weren't going to be allowed to show up on Saturday to any of the qualifying races or any of that extra stuff, which was supposed to be on Saturday. Can you imagine if they stuck with that and there
Why
were
is that,
no
though?
fans that could see? What's that?
Why didn't they allow any fans on Saturday?
So it was supposed to be some sort of like restriction thing. Like I think NASCAR really wanted to like prop themselves up in the LA area. So and they wanted people to show up on Sundays. So they were like, hey, you can't show up Saturday, but show up Sunday for the main, feature.
Weird.
But there were a lot of complaints, obviously, on social media. People were not happy. So what happened was they said fans can show up on Saturday and they can show up for free. So basically, if you showed up on Saturday, you got to see a free NASCAR race. I mean, that's really lucky if you were there on Saturday, and super unlucky if you were flying in on Sunday morning.
Ah, man, it's such a disaster. I mean, now I'm going to take the viewpoint of... Now, I missed it, because I thought it was Sunday night.
Same here. I missed it as well.
I missed it to even watch it. Because I wasn't planning on being home to watch, because I knew it was Sunday night, and I was looking forward to, watching it, seeing what was happening. And I missed it. I watched the highlights, saw Denny Hamlin won, and he beat everyone's favorite driver. I love that. Denny. I love that, by the way.
He's grown on me a lot in the last couple of years.
That's funny. But I think this kind of puts it to rest that this is the last time they went to the Coliseum. And it's kind of a poor way to end it, because I think they're going to take the clash, they're going to move it to somewhere else. It was an experiment to put this into a football stadium in LA to bring the product to the fans. It for the most part worked in the early years. It wasn't a sellout by any means. There were still always empty seats, and the environment was like... The people in LA were like, oh, what is this? We don't know why we're here, but we're here just because we're here. Yeah. And remember they had the halftime race concert. They had Ice Cube one year. They had Wiz Khalifa another year. I forget who was going to be this year.
Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah.
But
alright.
that did not happen.
And it didn't happen because it wasn't on the Sunday. So, yeah, I think because of this, you know, there were like 85 people in the stands.
If that.
If that. And it was just, it's so embarrassing as a NASCAR fan that was happening. But I'm going to defend NASCAR a little bit because, alright, number one, this could be the last year that they're going to the Clash. Number two, they have their biggest event, the Daytona 500, coming up, what, this weekend?
Next weekend.
Next weekend. Alright, so you do get a little bit of a buffer, but you also don't want to cause the teams and personnel for NASCAR to have to stick around to a Monday. Or maybe maybe it was not good Monday. Maybe they would have had to wait till Tuesday. And for the Clash, it just doesn't make sense to do that because it's an exhibition race. Why stick around for a few days when it's only an exhibition race? The weather didn't comply. This might be the last year we're going here. Let's just get this thing over with and get out of town. Let's move it to somewhere else next year. That's what I kind of got from NASCAR. And I will also say that all the fans out there, all the time, remember all these times, I mean, we went to New Hampshire last year and it rained on Sunday and we stayed on till the Monday, right? But
Yeah.
Saturday was clear all the way up until what, 7 o'clock or so.
Pretty much. It did rain a little bit in the modified race, but yeah, it was clear throughout most of the day.
And we knew the race was not going to happen on Sunday. We looked at the forecast, but NASCAR never moves the race earlier. They only move it back. So if the race is on Sunday, they're only going to move it to a Monday. But a lot of fans complain about that because they're like, well, why do we, a lot of fans rather just come a day early because most fans, I'd say, are already there for Saturday and Sunday if they're going to travel. If you're local, you could just come in whenever. But they never move it to a Saturday or the day before because if they know Sunday is going to be rain, Saturday is beautiful, a lot of fans I've been hearing say, NASCAR, why don't you just move the race? You know it's going to be raining all Sunday. Why try and make it a thing? You know you're just going to have to move it to Monday, so why move it to Monday and have less fans when you could just move it to Saturday and rearrange what other races were going to be meant for that day? Xfinity, qualifying, practice, all that stuff. So I applaud actually NASCAR for doing it this way rather than trying to stick in town for a market that doesn't really like NASCAR to begin with and run it on a Monday or even a Tuesday. So they just packed their bags and went home early as best they could. They got the hell out of town.
It's just unfortunate because NASCAR really is in a very isolated scenario when you compare it to any other sport. No other sport has this issue. You have baseball, which if baseball gets rained out, it gets rescheduled. But it's not as big of a deal if a baseball game gets rained out because there's 162 of them. There's only 36 regular season NASCAR races with a couple of exhibition races, and they only happen once a week. Baseball, you can play every day. So, I mean, best case scenario, you literally just reschedule a baseball game for 2 days later and have a double header. The amount of preparation that goes into a NASCAR race, the traveling that the teams have to do, NASCAR, they really need to figure out the rain tires for short tracks because I know they've invested in that in the last couple of years and they've tried it out, but they really need to. I really think that they can crack this down and they can create something to where they can race in like intermediate conditions on short tracks. But they got to do something because, like I said, there's no other sport that deals with this issue, and this is I mean, the weather's out of their control, but the tires aren't. They can do something with the cars or the tires to at least try and get a race in.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Because for the most part, fans who go to NASCAR races, they come from all over, right?
Yeah.
For the most part, if you're going to a baseball game, you're local. For the most part, and if there is bad weather, you can maybe, pick a game the day before or day after. Sometimes you get lucky, then they move out of town, then you missed a game, right? But for the most part, you're local, and then you just come back another day. You have 162 chances, right?
Yeah.
To catch a game in your local area. So yeah, it is an issue with travel there, but I think for the road courses, yeah, use your wet tire, and for short tracks, get a wet tire running and run it. And for the quicker ovals, I agree, it should just be done in the dry. But for the short tracks like New Hampshire, Martinsville, Phoenix, if it ever does rain in Phoenix, so
it has before, believe it or not.
And then they should use the tire.
Yeah, I don't know about Bristol though, because I think the banking would cause a pretty significant issue. But with like Martinsville, Phoenix, New Hampshire, all those tracks are pretty flat, so I think it would work for those tracks.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. All right, so we got through all the F1 NASCAR news for this week. Now it's time to talk a little bit about TCR. We had our round 1 of 14 for the F1 series last week for both the Challenger and the Elite series. I just want to quickly say thanks for everybody tuning in to last week and racing for round 1. I think what we're going to do, we're going to make it a little bit of a series on the podcast every time. I just thought of this, Camden. I didn't even tell you.
Okay.
Let me know what you think about this. Get a little bit of competition between the brands. Which brand are you? Are you Elite Series brand or are you Challenger Series brand? And let's see who supports which brand. So every podcast that we do one, if we do every week through season 17, at some point we'll talk a little bit about the race and what had happened. So by the time we're recording this, I'm gonna announce the TV ratings. Which brand had more views and likes from right now as we're recording it, and then we'll kind of keep a tally to see which brand beats the other brand.
You just came up with that? Are you sure you didn't plan this out throughout the day, being like, all right, here's my diabolical plan here. We're gonna compare the ratings. Okay. We're gonna do this every week.
No, I thought about it earlier today when I was rewatching the Challenger series.
So you did think about it earlier.
A little bit earlier today, yeah. But I didn't run it by you. Yeah. No, because I wanted to see which one did better, so then I was like, oh, alright, I might as well talk about it on the podcast. And make it something. Because you know what? I'm into TV ratings and for all sports. So I like to see the how it fluctuates between what events are on and how that impacts the TV ratings, whether it's on cable or not. But luckily we're not on cable, we're streaming. We're live streaming. We live stream Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. This will be released episode Tuesday morning. So tonight is the Challenger Series, so tune in. Camden will be commentating that. Tomorrow it will be the Elite Series. Now, the TV ratings are in.
Oh boy.
We have the Elite Series with 218 views and 9 likes.
Okay.
The Challenger Series. Is it over or under on views? 218.
I am going to go under.
It is over. 224 views for the
Oh,
Challenger
well.
Series,
That's pretty consistent.
and over under 9 likes.
I'm going over.
It is over. It's 12 likes for the Challenger Series. So this round goes to the Challenger Series. They won in the TV ratings.
Yeah, that's because you had your boy up in the booth commentating. That's why. Sorry, Seafreeze.
Well, once I get out
You
on
understand.
track, then Elite Series will be like, oh, Seafreeze is getting out on track. We might want to tune in for that one.
Oh boy. More competition for Camden.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish 16th instead of 15th next week.
Don't worry, I don't like Miami. Now, I will say that I did tune into the Challenger Series, and Sir Charles said that this will be the test to see if Seafreeze was watching. And Mexico, he says, was always one of my favorite tracks. It's always been a favorite track up there, and he always liked it when a lot of drivers don't usually say nice things about Mexico. It's not my favorite track, Sir Charles, and you did say that I would say something that I probably wouldn't like it. So yeah, that's true. I like the track. It's not one of my favorites, but it is. I've always enjoyed coming to Mexico. Usually, I don't really dislike it, but it's not my favorite. My favorites would be Britain, Japan, Singapore, but Mexico, I would say, is in the good, better half. So yeah,
I actually
just thought I'd
did
get through that.
a ranking recently of Formula One tracks. You know, the tracks I love racing at, the tracks I don't love racing at. Mexico was in the bottom tier. I don't know
For
what
you.
it is. I've never been great at Mexico, and it's a shame because I feel like my pace was actually okay last Wednesday. It's just, man, it was one thing after another. It started in qualifying. I got into a little bit of a racing incident in qualifying. We'll just leave it at that. But then the first corner of the feature race, I got into it with silent, which I felt bad about that. And then everything with the weather happened, and then
Yeah.
I was going through sector 2, and I see this really slow blue car ahead of me. And I'm like, what is he doing? It turns out that slow blue car was on soft tires during the rain. Okay, that's like rule number 1 of what not to do.
Are you talking about Bats Plus?
I am talking. Yeah, I didn't want to call him out, but
Don't worry, I will.
but no, I didn't know he was on soft. So when we went into the corner, I wasn't anticipating him stopping, and so I stopped into him, and we crashed. So yeah, I had a bad race, and I don't like Mexico. And if we can keep it off the schedule until season 19, that would be preferred. At least season 19.
Yeah, well, all I'll say is, it was good to be back for TCR Round 1. It was nice to see everybody out on track, competing, practicing this week. That was kind of cool to get the boys back together, and
Yes, sir.
it was cool to do the commentary and to have streams up on the YouTube, and we got some shorts. So we're full swing in the season, and now that we're going through it all, and when I saw the 20 drivers for the Elite Series, I was like, oh, I wish I was out there right now, because I would love to mix it up a few times this season, which that's when I'm able to. I'll be back in, ready to go. But yeah, the only other major things, I'm not going to go into detail about the races for the most part, but I would say that, in my opinion, I know I said professional was my favorite, but after hearing what he was saying, somewhat that he's kind of like almost like he's doubting himself, or maybe he's being realistic, saying, or maybe he's giving respect to Forzan and Silent, but he's happy with podiums, and he's saying that Forzan and Silent are much quicker. I might, maybe it doesn't count, but I might have to change my.
No, it does not count.
No, it doesn't.
Sorry.
No, well,
Sorry. No participation trophies here.
It doesn't count, but I will, I'll admit, maybe I'm wrong already, but I think the winners of each race are your favorites to win the championship for both series. We have some guy who won in the feature, or the main race. I think they call it the feature, for the Challenger Series, and then you had Forzan, who got the maximum amount of points. He didn't get a full sweep because he didn't get the actual qualifying pole, but he had everything. He won the sprint, he won the feature, and he got the fastest lap, so he had maximum points there. Forzan for Elite, and some guy for Challenger.
You know, something I will say on the Challenger side of things, I don't know if that was the best race to be an example as to where people's pace was at, because it was crazy. The weather, it's gonna be, I think some guy is gonna be up there, but I was super impressed with F1 Nerd as well. He did not have a great qualifying effort, and in the sprint race he worked his way up to the front. That sprint race was chaotic. The sprint race was more chaotic than the feature race. But no, F1 Nerd made up a lot of spots, and I think he did a pretty good job considering where he started in that race. But like I said, both races really were crazy. I mean, Silent got wiped out lap 1, and then he got into an incident on lap 4 and got crashed out of the race entirely. So I don't think we saw Silent's full potential. And hey, I mean, I know we basically have a full grid for Elite, but what have you always said, Seafreeze? There could always be somebody that joins the grid and at least mixes things up and takes some points away from other drivers. So, and with the new rule of, your worst 2 races don't get counted, Silent really is not losing out from this first round. He's just used one of his mulligans, basically.
Yeah, and I think you hate to use it so early on in the season, but I guess it's good that you have it to begin with. So, but this will actually count probably as one of his races because he finished high in the sprint, Silent, for the Elite Series. So it's not just he didn't get no points. So we're counting your best 12 races by points scored on that race. So not just by the main race, your points throughout the entire weekend. So since we had the sprint and he finished, I think 4th, he would get would he get 5 points? So 5 points. If he would need if he finished, what's 5 points? 8th is 4 points. So
7.5.
Yeah. So he would need that finish, for it, or better, for this one to get wiped off down the line. But that was the biggest shock for Elite, was Silent DNFing so early on too. For the first round, it was kind of underwhelming because a lot of people picked him as the favorite, and you know what, Forzan did a great job. We didn't really get to see Silent though, so we didn't really get to see how the pace lined up in the main race. So that was the biggest shock there, and just fully all a wet weekend. I guess I'll give my 2 drivers that kind of stood out in each series, or maybe I'll give some applause to them.
Okay.
For the Elite Series, I have GTR Lion. I thought his pace and race, he was always good at Mexico. That is, I will say, Sir Charles, GTR Lion's favorite track is Mexico. I can say that for a fact. Mexico's his favorite track, has to be, or maybe his best track. He's always good there, GT. And I don't think it was one of his, it wasn't the cleanest of races from him. I've seen, a couple little mishaps here and there, but all in all together, he put a good race for the first round. Kind of get the rust off a little bit, and he was battling with B-Tom, who returned as a reserve 20 minutes before the race, and he's battling with a 5-time platinum champion, mixing it up with professional, and his pace was strong. So, and that was your golden class champion from season 16. So, he's slotting up right in the top 5 podium hunt for the Elite Series. So good job from him. And then when we go over to the Challenger Series, I'll give a little shout out to. Well, you could go a few ways with this, but I was gonna say Chabar, because I thought he got unlucky with the rain in the sprint race, because he was on the full wet, and then then it kind of switched on him. But it was cool to see him kind of continue that speed that he had from last year. But you could even go with Kluka, who won the sprint. F1 Nerd I think he double podiumed, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so he had solid points, kind of picking up where he left off. And but if I had to pick one, I really liked. Where did Kluka finish in the main?
He crashed out
He
early
did.
on.
See,
Yeah.
Then I can't
Yep.
pick him. I guess I gotta go. I don't know. I like the Rebel team. F1 Nerd and Chabar. Those are my guys. I thought they had a good opening round.
Okay, so I'll start with Elite and then go down the Challenger. I'm not going to pick GTR Lion just because, I figured I'll pick somebody else. But I did say, I just want to flash back, I did say that his pace was going to be up there. He finished ahead of KD, which that was one of the things we pointed at.
Yep.
Was when KD raced last season, he kicked everybody's butt. But yeah, Lion had legitimate pace, but I was really impressed with Zionical because he seemed to be maybe the only guy that really excelled with the strategy, which was hard to do because the weather changed literally 5 times during that race. If you want to see that, go check out the shorts. We have a short up about that. But he called it. There was one point where we had to put on the wet tires. He was the first one to do it. The next time we put on intermediate tires, he took those 18 laps to the end and ended up getting points. And he was, I think before that, he was projected to not finish up there in the points. So good job by Zionical with the strategy for the Elite Series. For Challenger, I'm going to go down to 4th place and say Hallberg really impressed me. He was quick in the sprint race, and in the feature, he finished P4 and only finished a couple seconds behind C. Rizzi. And that wasn't because of any fluke or safety car. Those two were legitimately battling for that podium spot in the second half of the race. And remember, C. Rizzi was a Golden Class driver last season. And most Golden Class drivers went up to Elite. So C. Rizzi basically went down, in a way, to race on Tuesdays. And Hallberg was going toe-to-toe with him. So big thumbs up to Hallberg.
Yeah, and after the first one in the books, now we go to Miami, and yeah, we'll see what happens now.
I know. This is when it gets good.
Oh yeah. Any other things that happened that we want to mention? I just also want to mention this week is iRacing that starts up for Super Formula. That's Thursday. If I'm around, I might try and stream it just to kind of mess around with it for the first time. But we do have seats open. Super Formula, we have 12 races. We're only going to count your best 10. There is a league on iRacing, so you can search us on iRacing leagues and you can join that way. But you could also go to the website, sign up, join the Discord, do all that. But if you want to find, if we're not streaming it, I'd suggest you try and find somebody who is maybe going to stream their point of view, if you want to try and get a little glimpse of how that's going to be on Thursday, until we get our streaming completely under control. We are looking for commentators. If we have somebody on iRacing who wants to do commentary, we'll stream it. We just need some commentators for the iRacing series for Super Formula. So if anybody knows anybody who wants to help recruit a commentator, let us know for that. But anything else from round one, Camden?
I don't think so. I think just be on the lookout this week, obviously, for the races, but the shorts are back for season 17. We kind of took a break from them from season 16, but we'll be doing those every week to kind of recap the races. And make sure to follow us on socials, too. We do have accounts on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, aka X.
Nice. Well, there you have it. So, hope everybody enjoyed listening. If this was successful, you would have listened on Apple Music and or Spotify, as well as YouTube. So yeah, you can find out more information by going to our website, trinitycompetitive.racing.com, and following us on all socials at Trinity Racing. You could join the TCR Discord server where we are most active. Look out for the streams today. Tonight will be the Challenger Series, Wednesday Elite Series, and yeah, from Camden to myself, C. Freeze. And until next time, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening.